Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thought I would do a quick video this morning and I'd talk about a few things that I'm not supposed to talk about because I'm a white man. I'm going to talk about a dream that I had just last night. And I'm going to talk about my connection to the land. And I'm going to talk about trees. I'm going to talk about ownership. So I'll begin, I suppose, at the location of this specific dream. I've been having quite intense dreams because I'm not smoking cannabis or marijuana. Basically, the largest change I notice if I don't smoke marijuana as compared to when I do is that I have a lot more dreams. And these can be, I've always had them since I was very young. These dreams are quite vivid and they take me a long time to kind of put together, and they affect me. They make me tired because there's a lot going on while I'm asleep, whereas when I smoke marijuana, it's like I'm kind of doing that while I'm awake. I'm getting all these insights in like a slower, more consumable way that is easier to translate. So this dream took place on my childhood property, which was in Sawyers Valley, which actually weirdly means Sawyer is someone who cuts down trees. Now, we had lots of trees. This was probably an agricultural property that had been left to regrow, and there was also significant trees there that were quite large, of both the Jarrah and Marri, red gum, and the Jarrah. Two very large examples of these trees, both of which I hope very strongly are still there and haven't been removed. The idea of them being removed is sacrilegious to me, and so I haven't been there for a very long time, so I do hope that they're still there. But basically the dream was, I was travelling up there and someone had purchased this land and they were farming rabbits on the land, which people actually do. Farming rabbits, and they had horses and some other things. And the area that I had become very fond of, a very small area of emergent bush down the bottom of the property, had been massively grazed. So all the undergrowth was gone, there was grass, and there was just remnants of trees that were in a very sad state, and everything was nice green grass, and then these people were selling rabbits from there. And there was a couple of other things, but then I woke up and this was what I was left with. Now, it is true that Aboriginal people have a deep connection to the land, but they roamed very large areas. So their connection to the land, and I've done this anecdotally, I've done this as well. They had a connection, I can almost 100% assume, with patterns of land. And there would have been specific regions, but where they differ from us massively is their ownership of land that we have brought. This ownership of land, because I was contained as a child onto one, in comparison, small patch of land. We walked around the whole town, and we walked to school and walked basically everywhere. So I had a good understanding of the overall region, but my specific patch of land that I was born on, I knew that thing like the back of my hand, and I still do. I still know where significant trees are. I still know where significant rock outcrops, or if they haven't been removed, where all kinds of things are on that block of land, because I was contained to it. And then this is where I differ, because I come from a background of of land improvement in both building and horticultural projects. If my family had have retained that property, I would feel confident in my ability to make improvements on that land because of all these factors. I have a respect for the overall land. I have a respect for the native flora and fauna. And I do believe that I could harmoniously integrate those two things to make the place sing specifically for the needs of humans. But I have been unable to do this because our government in Western Australia has attempted to create a utopian vision in which all the what would have been in the past described as disruptive aspects of our population have been provided for with everything they need, and then left to disrupt everyone else. So this is why I've explained it as that my mother, a mentally ill woman for 50 years, medicated and supported by the state government, has stolen property from my father under false guarantees, the guarantee to look after his children, which one of them is dead and one of them has been constantly kicked off wherever she may be. There's no interaction with the land. There's no improvement made to the land. There's no anything but consumption. And this is where we are. We've been stagnant, stalled, in my observation. As West Australians, yes, there's a lot of money coming and going from this place, but as native-born West Australians, we are being pushed off our land exactly the same as the Aboriginals have, but we're being pushed off our specific patches of land. They're being carved up. They're being developed with urban sprawl. They're being attempted to be taken by force by the West Australian Labor Party in the regional areas. There is no time to do anything because it's constant defence. And the biggest problem with this is there is no shortage of land in this state. This current housing affordability crisis is a fictitious spectre. It doesn't exist. It's not real. I don't want a fucking house in some shithole suburb because it's got a fucking Nando's there. I never have. I want my family property back. And I want the state government to explain to me what the hell it's fucking doing in doing this. If I'm forced out of this gigantic state to flee back to the state of my father's birth, which I'm not even going to call the state anymore, the country of my father's birth, the separate island identity of Tasmania that is not connected to the mainland, in the hearts, minds, and his history, yeah, it's a completely different entity. And so we have the greediest state on earth, the largest state on earth, constantly throwing fuel on this property bubble that is only going to bring sorrow to all the people that have bought into it. Mostly now, at this stage, being foreign people that have been dispossessed from their own land. Based on a fairy tale in which Aboriginal people cared for the same land, cared for land in a superior way than we did. They cared for the land because they were hungry They set fire to it and created the largest ecosystem by just, like, that's just what they did. There's nothing really wrong with it when there was no one else here. They created the largest Weber barbecue you can have. They burnt it. The animals that were burnt fell from the trees. The ones they didn't find were eaten by dingoes or by ants or by whatever. And so the bush slowly but surely developed ways to be resilient against this burning and to thrive, but not thrive in the way that it could do. And if the barbecue didn't work anymore, they moved on to the next barbecue. And this worked. But we can't do this with civilization unless we can. Shall we just burn Ellenbrook and move on? And this is where we look at the United States. We see this in California. They're just burning it and moving on. California doesn't have stone castles, stone walls. It never got to that stage. And that's what, when I look at Western Australia, this is what I see. We have resources here to make this place beautiful if we're allowed to use them. Now, when I've done a lot of reading about convicts and things and people, pioneers in developing, they had access to things like quarries to quarry their stone. They had access to resources around the place that were common resources to be used to pioneer. And all we have now is Midland brick. With the most unsustainable thing, it's 2 stories, 1 less roof. Far less work. There's so many mistakes we've just continuously made over and over and over again. The overlying plans can be modified, but what is the vision? I never hear anyone talking about the actual level of development that we should be talking about, because they're all trying to keep up with some type of international fucking wankfest about something that is retarded. We need clear visions for each specific region. We don't need politicians just throwing scraps to people to get votes. We are not in an area that should be strangled by its own growth. We are an outcamp, a pioneering outcamp, and there's a lot of us. But rather than building stable, secure futures or even conceiving them, we're all wankers. We're all fucking showing off conspicuous consumption down to every consumable level. Which level would you like to conspicuously consume on? And then everyone decides where they will stake their claim. And then they get to work displaying their things or their houses or their cars. And then the children see the same thing. And the funniest thing of all, this started with a dream about me talking about some trees that I used to play under on a property that my family used to own. And no one cares, but I fucking care. And I don't care because anyone else cares. I care because I know that place. Because in the my 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old brain, that place was eternal. And unlike a lot of people in my situation, it still exists. And there's no reason for it to not exist. There's no reason for it not to be maintained and allowed to present itself in this current market. One of the most worrying things I see, and we've talked about it for 20 years now, it's been coming for 20 years, which even that in itself is too long to be preparing for something that has just been conceived on pen and paper. And this is this boomer retirement, mass retirement. And this is what we're facing. And this is the first match in the box of matches that is going to financially destroy this place. Because supply and demand guarantees that it will. There is more land here than we know what to do with in 1,000 lifetimes. We have a segment of our society that is hoarded and projected their wealth and their status down to the most disgusting level and hijacked the attention, the focus and the futures of the entire population of the area for 20 plus years based on their retirement. But they haven't created a sustainable world, a sustainable structure for them to retire into. They haven't perceived the fact that retirement might be very long, might be very patient. They're not all sitting on little small holdings, which is all that their ancestors who scrabbled and scrambled here on boats and in chains would have ever dreamt for. They've all collectively tried to bite the entire apple in one bite. And so we're left with a system of care, of support, that is being hijacked, that is being misused, that is being cannibalistic on the younger generations. The support structure we actually need just to adjudicate this transition of generational holdings is so large, so complicated, and so incompetent that it is the major financial burden that the young people are carrying. And it's all fiction. All of it. None of it is real. On solid rock, none of it is real. A few days ago, I started a journey where I was going to walk back to Tasmania. I was going to make it. I can guarantee you I was going to make it. The things I would have seen on that journey, just the experience alone, would have been invaluable. 2 hours into that journey, I was free. I felt a freedom that I have almost never felt. The only time coming close is when I was a young, optimistic boy playing under those trees at the front of my family property. Because if I knew those trees, I could know other trees, and everything was possible. There was more than enough things there for me to do whatever. I would constantly go down and I would find dead branches and do things, and I would start building little homes for myself because I didn't want to live in the house with my mother. I never did. Any chance I got, I would move out of that house onto another property or another dwelling on the property. Because I didn't want to be plugged in to that machine that made her so disruptive and so vindictive onto the external world. But counterintuitively, I also wanted to protect her from being mistreated or from being used. So why was I given this task by the West Australian government? What is the reason? Why was this system of care made? And why has it been neglected for so long? And why? If the very people that are best suited to talk about their observations, about the mistreatment, about the just incompetence of the whole system, why, if those individuals choose to speak about it, are they being imprisoned, called crazy, forcibly removed from family properties whilst trying to make improvements to them, and then run out of the state by armed enforcers? Why? What game are you playing? And so the strange thing that we have to get to when we're talking about Aboriginal relations in this country, we've listened to a lot of the things. I love the culture. I understand lots of it. But why aren't they listening to us? Why are we appeasing all these levels of people that are not doing anything? Why are we propping up a class of dependents above innovators, above actual carers, above scientists, observers, documenters? We have the Prime Minister this morning announcing another payback thing for university degrees, bailing out individuals who have been fortunate enough to experience higher education. My family didn't come here in chains. It didn't come here as convicts, but I got to the position where even in convict status, breaking rocks and stacking them on top of each other, I am against the interests of the West Australian Labor Party in Western Australia in 2025. Now, I didn't voluntarily admit myself to mental health institutions. I was born into a mental health institution funded by the West Australian government. And I was the head carer, head warden, head provider, head security, head everything in that arrangement that they built. Luckily, I had an amazing assistant, my younger brother, who in my opinion was killed based on interference by the pharmaceutical industry into his life, spruiked on by my mother, adjudicated by my mother, supported by my mother. So what do we do now? When I say these things, you go, well, people need care. You're just trying to take people's care off them and then they need to be members of society. Are they being productive members of society? And what does that even mean in this day and age? Based on my record, on my interactions with the West Australian government, I would be described as a destructive member of society. Because I'm bringing focus to things that have been purposefully kept dark, and I want to know why they've been kept dark. What are you trying to do? with the state of my birth. Who are you trying to appease? How on earth are you going to even out all this in the minds and the hearts of West Australians? I don't want to have the place where I live as a giant Weber barbecue. If I ever feel like that, I'll wander out into the thousands of hectares in the country that are scarcely populated, and I'll feed the fucking birds and set fire to the trees, and it will be wonderful. I wanted to do here what my ancestors have done for thousands of years. I wanted to build stable and long-lasting structures and foundations to provide for the ongoing needs of my family. And this is what has been stolen from me. On the authority granted by institutions specifically designed to encourage that. With the catchphrase everyone loves to throw around now, colonisation. Well done. You've stopped colonisation in its tracks, well before I was born, frozen. Big round of applause for the National Labour Party. That monstrous growth that always points fingers at everyone else. Everyone else. How many ex-Labor representatives are sitting on large crops of land with what, a tin shed there? After 40 years? With the technologies we have access to? What's my excuse? My excuse is I've been fighting against this because it's been getting to a stupid point. A point of no return, a point of me leaving. Putting foundations down in the place, you need to be secure at the future of that place, and I've never, in my life, been less secure. That is why yesterday I published publicly, that I will not be voting in the West Australian election. Because I am still under duress. There is no greater example of the word duress than what I've been put under by the West Australian government, led by Mark McGowan and Roger Cook. For 3 years, no comment. Not important. Mark McGowan not even coming from this state. Coming from New South Wales. Forcing poison into all of you at gunpoint. There's only one thing historically that you'd call what's been going on for the last couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, and that's a coup. And considering the communist leanings of the Labor Party, it's a communist coup. And considering the largest export of this state being minerals, and the largest purchaser of that being China, and the leader of China being the Chinese Communist Party, this has been a Chinese attempted coup, attempted invasion on West Australian soil. Still somehow flickering in the wind because of the terror they broadcast day in, day out, second by second at the beginning of the pandemic. For 3 years, almost constantly, I have felt my life is in danger, because it was in danger. For 3 years now, I've had to watch the deterioration of almost every single thing, person, that I see around me. For 10 years, I've been saying that this is a bubble. But just like people sitting in a pokie machine at Crown Casino, my words do nothing to shift that continuous road to inevitable destruction that you all are holding up in the air. Every morning you have a choice. You can put foundations and you can start doing something that's actually going to create a stable future that's untouchable to these type of forces, but you all decide to just give the balloon a little bit of air. We can go a little bit further. Just a little bit further. We're almost there. We're almost where? Where are we almost? We're almost in a world where we can colonize by destroying colonization. And the greatest thing of all is when I hear people that have been here, that have come from England 5 minutes ago, talking about colonization. What? What on earth is going on? With skills that don't do anything, that aren't willing to actually do the work of this stage in urban development, in state development, in colonization. No skills, no effort, no energy, no resources, no money. Agents of sabotage sent here by the overabundance of support coming from the exact fucking place that my family left from to colonize. Now, my family, historically, we already colonized an island. It's called Britain. We already did it. It was that structures of that colonization that enabled you to flee, or in your case, flee. In my case, it enabled you to vacation in a far-off, distant outcrop to try and run around with sticks and stones and signs, protest signs, to appease your type of primitive fucking kink where you feel like you're running around like a native person. Well, you're not. You're squatting in a colony under duress, under a communist invasion. The whole game needs to be fucking evened out. The whole board needs to be exposed. The whole conversation needs to be had. There is plenty of areas where all the people, native people of this country, can practice their native traditions, but a lot of them aren't. And the most vocal proponents of this anti-colonization thing are the people that are benefiting most from colonization, with no backup plans, no structures, no historical. It's just people that feel dispossessed by the previous colonization, probably because they weren't doing anything, just continuously doing it. So what happens next? You want to appease your desire to end colonization by colonizing the colonization place under duress, by restricting the native-born people from continuing to colonize the place. And you live in the absolute fruit of colonization. You don't live down in the dirt or in the structure, in the roots, or in anywhere that's hard. You live in the fucking provided for pillow, cot, nursery, king-size bed of colonisation. Something that I've never been blessed with. To the eyes of most people living in Peppermint Grove and in Dalkeith, they'd be like, oh, well, that young boy, you know what I mean? We pay his mother so that he doesn't starve. I wasn't going to starve. I would have been just fine. There would have been a lot of people there that could have looked after me if my father wasn't thrown off his property. There were people that looked after me. My mother's sisters looked after me. My father's friends looked after me. I would have eventually looked after myself. I pretty much always did anyway. But why was I doing the job? What does it actually take to be the training, to be a guard, security guard or whatever, at a mental institution with 2 violent offenders that are being paid by the West Australian state government? What is the training? What is the income of those individuals? And why wasn't I paid? Why has all the care been broken down to the individual level when it was never the individual level that the people were being locked up for? The reason we had asylums wasn't to provide care. It was to remove the destructive elements from our society because they were causing too much disruption. And this utopian pharmaceutical solution, yes, better than lobotomies, better than confinement, better than torture, better than all these things that were going on before. But not good enough to outsource that role to children. Intergenerational children. The children of the children. To prop the disruptive individuals up in the shadows to absolute control. The exact reason we even have the terms mentally ill is to prevent those individuals from doing that. And if you focus in and you look at the the pharmaceutical industries and how they have treated the populations of the world, I can guarantee you that those individuals are the most dangerous of the mentally ill people. That based on this incompetence by all governments, have not just risen to the top, they've risen to ultimate power. Not voted for, not elected, not openly and publicly given responsibility, like monarchs, shadow operators of pure chaos and destruction, cultivated by a system of care that outsources the most dangerous, most confronting roles to children, myself being one of them, my dead brother being another, and the countless children out there now caring for either their alcoholic, drug-dependent, mentally ill, psychotic, psychopathic parents that are on the government payroll. So yeah, for me,
marijuana is a little bit lighter, you know what I mean? Getting bombarded with that upon waking throws a big spanner in my day. But I suppose maybe it does some good. And that doesn't mean I'm mentally ill, it means that I've had a very hard job to do since I was born. Not the job that I was told I was there for by my mother. That job was very different. That job was self-serving to my mother, as you would expect. The job that I had to independently evaluate for myself based on countless study into ethics, into principles, into history, into every single thing to legitimize what I'm saying now. To liberate myself from the slavery I was born into, to the slavery that I was ignored from, to the slavery enacted onto me by the West Australian government for 38 years. Not from a position of struggle. We had everything we needed. We were actually quite well off. We had property, we had resources, we had everything we could ever imagine. And so this makes this even more confronting, because individuals that have none of that everywhere, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of children in this state will be under the same conditions, amplified 38 years into the future. Right now, every day. Every day they're getting themselves up, getting their uniforms on, getting to school, and then going back to hell to do a job that the West Australian government pretends that it's doing. Those children are the reason that I'm still here and that I didn't continue walking to Tasmania, which I probably realistically would have discovered similar problems, because this isn't intentionally done by these state governments. It has been infiltrated. It has been lied to. It has been promised bullshit by individuals of the most disruptive class, the criminally psychotic individuals running these pharmaceutical institutions. Now, one thing the WA government loves talking about is asbestos. Take asbestos, right? Something I've worked on tons, and maybe one time I'll have an issue with it. And I know people that have. Most of the people were people mining it, people children jumping around and things. This pharmaceutical is 10,000 times larger than asbestos. And the largest distributor of these pharmaceuticals at the moment is the West Australian government. Now, these kids in this area, whatever it is, the one that McGowan got all the strife for, they're the children doing the job that the West Australian government won't do. And how do they reward them? They stick them in a dungeon in which they're more than likely physically, sexually, mentally, psychologically abused. In the dark, voiceless, hopeless, and utterly tortured. To cover up the incompetence of 50 years of government neglect, of government misallocation of funds. So yeah, I don't like Mark McGowan, I don't like Roger Cook. But as you can probably see, this is a long problem. This is a big problem. This is everyone's problem collectively. And although I can't wait to see those individuals prosecuted for their extreme activity over the last 4 years, that will pale in comparison to the massive changes required to liberate these children from roles that they never should be doing. Now, as far as answers go, I don't know. The beginning is a discussion, an open discussion. Exposure, that's the beginning. A delicate conversation needs to be started in order to address this shadowy realm of our society. Because if the individuals that they're caring for, the individuals paid for by the government, feel like their funds are in jeopardy, like their support system is in jeopardy, they will play up even more. They will sow even more seeds of chaos into our already struggling society. So I don't know. But until the conversation starts, we have no chance in hell of repairing it. Well, a short video turned into a longish video. And this is what we should be seeing from every politician every single fucking day under the circumstances we are currently in. If we are not seeing this, we are seeing real estate agents, we are seeing salesmen in situations that are becoming daily, very warlike. So if you're in that race to be at the top of this fucking shithole, you'd better start fucking talking. You'd better start fucking doing your job. You'd better stop selling bullshit. And you'd better start fucking rescuing children from your fucking incompetence.